are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. Thank you. Welcome to Rewriting the Script.
Thank you.
I was just singing your accolades just before, but I think it's important for everyone to know who you are and the amazing body of work that you have managed to accumulate in such a short, well, what seems to us like a short amount of time, to you is your lifetime. This is Moeti. She is a writer and director. She's a company owner and showrunner, which is pretty huge. You've been head writer for absolutely amazing shows like Lockdown, Abomzala, Sestopla, Tandega's Diary. Also been a director for commercials, Mjindini, Abomzala, Memuketi. I mean, the list is absolutely endless. The amount of work you've done is so impressive. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, Sunny.
It's an absolute pleasure. Okay, so the first way I want to kick off today's segment is to ask you a question that I think I want to frame a lot of these conversations around and kind of get your first idea as, what is it about a story?
What is it about a story?
Yeah, what is it about a story?
It's just like, if you don't tell it, if it's there inside of you, it's just in there, right? And it'll burn you until you tell it to someone. So whether it is something you heard, and that's, what is it about a story? Is that thing that makes people gossip, right? Is that thing that makes you pick up the phone and want to tell your friend immediately, like you will not believe. That is the thing about a story, is that if not shared, it just almost like feels like it just sinks slowly and dies and kills a little bit of you at the same time.
So when then was the moment when you realized that the stories you're telling are those moments that make people call up their friends or their family, the water cooler moments?
It's just, I think sometimes observing life around you and storytelling around you. Like, for me, it's just watching how people also receive stories. So I've always enjoyed listening to stories and receiving stories. And it's, I see the pleasure that it gives people to just sit there and listen, like, really? And then you know, so
okay.
I think we all grew up with that. It's just like, how much does it resonate with you to do something about it, you know? And for me, it was the visual aspect of it that made me pursue it, because I've always liked painting and drawing, and I was just that child who enjoyed using any type of visual medium, whether it was just taking photographs and sharing them with family members, photo albums. It just, the visual aspect of storytelling was what appealed to me the most, and what gave me the push to pursue this as a career.
Okay, well, people might not know that you've been working since 2007. That's like while you were still studying. That is a hell of a lot of time, long time in the industry. So I feel like you've seen the industry shift through all the different machinations sort of that it has become. That, and you started off as a PA, which for people who don't know, that's a production assistant. That's a lot of the admin running around work. And now you're a showrunner. You are literally like, you the boss bitch. If so how have you cut your teeth to kind of move through all these segments to be where you are now?
I've tried to understand the industry and how the engine runs, you know, and the best way to do that, I would feel, is being a small fish in a big company, and also being a big fish in a small company.
Okay.
So a lot of people will ask, especially when you start doing your internships, like, I have an opportunity maybe at the SABC, right? And interning at the SABC, do you get as much value as if you became immediately a production manager at a small production company, right? So I think that both types of experiences are worthwhile, because you get to understand bureaucracies differently. You get to understand systems and how companies are run, and also the motivation behind certain decision inside of a company. You get to understand them differently. So for instance, I was an intern at a very small company that did Take 5 at the time. And then I also worked at special assignment as an intern. So I got to be in a small pond, and I also got to be in a big ocean like SABC.
Yeah.
So then you understand the motivation behind storytelling, and not just storytelling, but the business and how it's run. And ultimately, you are working for an industry, and it's a business, and you have to understand how that is managed.
Okay, so if you speak about it then as like a business that's kind of managed, and you have moved into sort of being a business with Reabetswe Media, which is the production company that you run that has a show on Showmax, which is so amazing. How have you navigated being a creative to now being the person who has to take into consideration everything, not just the creative?
So part of my training sort of helped to groom me in terms of speaking that language, right? Which is how to put together a format and pitch it. So not just getting the idea and understanding how the concept is going to work and creating that and harnessing it, but also how do you sell it? How do you match it with a platform and make someone, a client, understand that this is what's best for their business, or that kind of thing. So I understood as I was still studying that part of being in the industry, for me anyway, would not just be creating and then letting it go. It would be seeing the product through. So even when I started, I guess maybe I didn't know that in my undergrad, because I only learned that stuff when I was doing my master's. And by then I understood that I wanted to place myself in the industry a little bit differently, is that I wanted to understand the business of this industry, not just be a creative. Because in South Africa, the industry has not become so holistic that creatives can just be creatives, let go of their ideas or concepts, and therefore have a share in creative IP, for instance, and still be looked after, So also we need to be part of an industry that doesn't leave the creatives behind. And at the moment, that's what the industry does. So until this industry does not leave the creative behind, I'm going to see my creations through all the way.
So you're completely deliberate about taking ownership of your creative work so that you don't just become a gun for hire, in essence.
Yeah, and a lot of there's lots of ways to do that. You don't, and the perception was that you have to own a production company, you have to understand accounting, and you have to understand budgets and things inside of production to be able to do that. And I'm understanding as I keep participating in the industry that it's not the only way to do that. You can negotiate differently. Once you're a creator, you can partner with a production company where where you're taken care of, where people who understand and have a passion for running production can take care of your product and see it through, and you can still get your cut of whatever deal is made.
I love that approach, simply because you're allowed to completely express your creativity whilst knowing that everything else is going to be taken care of at the same time. I think there's a really big duality in this industry, that you're expected to know everything.
Exactly.
And every single part of the business, and it's impossible to know without coming up across some hardships. Okay, so you've said before that awards and accolades kind of help you further assert that your voice is going along in the right track. And as a multi-award winning creator, writer and director, how do you keep true to your voice? When there's things like client, actors, production companies, as you say, there's producers, there's so many parts of the puzzle. How do you make sure that Ria's voice is still in whatever we watch on the screen?
That one is always, it's continuous. You don't do it once and then you got it. You work or you service multiple platforms, multiple production houses sometimes, or multiple channels and broadcasters, and you still have to renegotiate that position because and I work with a producer who asks me very important questions. Sometimes I need to remember to ask myself that, is that, do you want this made or do you want it made your way? And sometimes that's where it's such a it's a big loggerhead, because it's like, I want to have, someone can tell themselves, I want to get a feature film made, right?
Yes.
I want the credit of, I have written, I've directed this feature film, right? But then there's that thin line. Do you want that product made in the voice that is authentic to you, in with the nuances that are authentic to your voice, or are you willing to compromise on some of those things for the sake of seeing it made? And some clients or people that you might have to collaborate with, who have the money, who have certain powers over you, may always try to negotiate those fine lines with you, because it's like, I want to tell a story about my upbringing in Pretoria. And then I'll find someone in the Eastern Cape who's willing to give me the money only if I make it in the Eastern Cape. Then how
so
do
now
you
which one? I love your producer's question, because which one wins? Moreover, which one is more likely to win? I need to get this thing made, or I need to get this thing made my way?
It's not always black and white, and it's not always a very direct answer for me. I think there's some things that I will hold back on, that I'll say, no, you know what, actually on this one we'll pass. And then there's sometimes where I'll compromise, like, you know what, I actually just want something like this attached to my name, so let's go. So it's not always the same, and sometimes it's hard, but you find yourself having to negotiate that with yourself, and it's good to interrogate yourself on that, and it's also good to draw lines. You are not always going to just give up that that attachment to your product.
Yeah.
So
then I'm very interested in the kind of leadership styles of women. I feel like when you give women a voice and you give women a platform to lead and to run things can work in a very different way that we might not be used to. And you've spoken about your show, which is Woke in Progress, that you had a female team, it's female run, even the broadcaster was a female-led team. What are the nuances that you find when you work with a female-led team?
Wow, it's hard it's hard to say, because again, you don't always find that. It's like, I might have had one experience of that, and that could have been a very isolated experience from other times and from other people's experiences, but I had a particularly nurturing experience. I had the opportunity to be maybe emotional and introspective about some of the decisions I made and how I made them. But ultimately, what everyone always understands is that, look, we're running a business, okay? You have to deliver. There's things that are neither male or female. They're just the nature of the game, And what's lovely about my experience working with women, and again, I will say that it's not exclusive to women. There have been very nurturing men who have encouraged and pushed me in the right direction, have opened doors for me. And we cannot also exclude those people, because they also dominate the industry, So my experience has been that I've always been able to think about the messaging in the long run for what I want to do with my career and what legacy I want to build, as opposed to we're working on one project, deliver this now,
With you.
So it's more about, can we bring in interns when we do this? Can we empower people in a different way? Can we open up opportunities that have not previously been there? So the conversation is more than just how to treat a product at that moment. So that's been my experience working with women, is that we've been able to have a longer type of like a broader outlook on what this opportunity afforded to us can do for our community. Yeah.
I really like that as a leadership style and as a way to grow this industry, is that we can't just be focused on what is the end product for this specific title or property that we're working on. Is that there is a global, like a much more bigger national community that we actually need to nurture and grow in order for this industry to move forward. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. What I want to speak to you about Lockdown, which is such a successful show and has been so great. I want, the key thing that I watched when I watched the first season, I was just like, are these guys serious? A whole show around women, like the whole cast. I was
Right.
mind blown. I was like, they bought into this and it's actually being made. And that's not just the local thing. That's like a global thing. That having complete female run ensemble cast. So can you take us through that process? How was it selling that, and like all of these different ranges of characters and the types of females that were on that show?
I mean, Lockdown was not an easy show. Okay, it was a hard show from the beginning to end. One thing that was very important to me was that it's not just putting women in front of the screen, but it's also working with women behind and in the process of creating the show. So when we started, I really felt very strongly about having an all-female writing team. I wanted us to, and a lot of people don't know that. They just like look at, what's on the screen, but behind the scenes, we were trying to give female writers also the voice to, the opportunity to be part of telling other female stories. And that for me was very important because,
Phenomenal. That's wonderful.
yeah, because we had so many nuances and sensitivities that we had to deal with and be tender when we are handling that kind of content. And we also wanted to feel as authentic as possible in terms of understanding where the motivation for certain things would have come from. And also just like trying to be as sensitive as possible to how the women on screen would react to what we gave them on the page,
That is amazing. I did not know it was an all-female writing team.
Yeah,
I almost feel like
season 1 and 2, I think, and 3 also. I think season 3.
that's phenomenal, but also not just that. I mean, your technical crew was female-led. There was so many vocal, powerful women behind the scenes. And do you think that contributed to the performances you got out of the characters and the actors?
I think that the atmosphere had the energy of power, of we are doing, we want to create a legacy with this piece, and whether that energy was fed off each other or it was just everyone just being so motivated and dedicated to just bring it on their own. I think either way, it was just like, it was there, from everywhere, and whoever latched onto it, whether you were visiting set or you were part of the crew or cast, I think it was just like undeniable that the energy was just spread across. We were shooting at Constitution Hill also, that, and in the women's prison as well.
Yes,
so
yes.
It was everywhere. It was just everywhere.
So all the elements kind of worked together to make this, show. I want to speak about the representation of females on screen. And is that you weren't afraid, particularly because it was it's like nothing we've ever seen on local television, right? When you saw these women characters who were so incredibly flawed, who were problematic, who had done bad things, but not necessarily are bad people. They were very complex and they were layered. It feels like you really went down a journey with those characters.
The motivation, the stories we had in the build up to writing the scripts were phenomenal. We could have just picked a few people, told their stories, and we would still gotten amazing results, So having actual inmates, former inmates, support us through the project was the most helpful thing we could have gotten. And you know, the prison stories are all over the world, but there's a texture of South African female prison stories that were particularly interesting. How a lot of women are not evil or bad people who just did wrong and therefore deserve to rot in prison. There were so many textures and layered motivations behind it. And for myself, the research was just phenomenal. When I was a student in Cape Town, I spent some time working with young in prison, and I did some facilitation work in Posmo. Was it Posmo? Gosh, it could have been, but it was a young in prison and juveniles who were awaiting trial. And that experience from that age already made me look at the criminal justice system differently and understand how, I mean, you find young people who are arrested for being a teenage mother who was stealing milk, you know, and not having 200 Rand bail, you know. So it just made me understand. The research aspect of it was just so amazing, and it made me understand that the stories that have to be on the screen have to be as layered and as complex as the real people are.
So it's interesting because I just want everyone to know, because what's also important about this show with Rewriting the Script is that this is really a platform to celebrate the work of female creators, and is that you can tell such diverse stories, and that's like a testament to you and your amazing story capabilities, is that you move between drama and comedy so seamlessly. Lockdown is a heavy drama. It's rooted in very deep subject matter, but then you can go on and produce comedies, Sesla, all of these things. So what's your approach when approaching a comedy and when approaching a drama?
So my first work is through comedy. That's I would say, you know, how I started working in scripted, and Lockdown was actually my first drama that I worked on. So I didn't think that you know, I didn't know how I'd do in drama. I just had to do it and find out, you know. And with comedy, at some point, I started feeling comfortable in that because I was doing it, I was getting it right. And also particularly sitcoms. They were just like, I understood the format and I understood certain broadcasters that we were working with at the time. So I sort of knew the template. So, and also there's, some people are apprehensive about having comedic writers work in the drama space, and but some of the dramatic work or scripts I've received from comedy writers is usually so much more complex because they understand how to milk moments of humor, or they understand awkwardness. You know, there's certain nuances that you don't get from you know, dramatic writers because they're focused on the heaviness of the story, whereas, you know, a comedic writer can find moments of relief in big dramatic moments. So for me, I still like comedy first. I find myself gravitating towards it even when I'm writing dramatic scripts. I find myself
to find the humor pockets.
I because I think naturally that's maybe where my voice is, because maybe I'm afraid of awkward moments as a, you know, as a person, and therefore therefore I maybe look for ways to make light of it, or to find a happy place or something, you know.
I am typically a drama writer, but I've been working on a comedy, and I found that the approach and the fundamentals are the exact same, right? You got to write the truth and the funny, and the funny and the truth. And somehow the comedy will find its way in your crafting of the story. But I found that my worst drafts are the ones where I try to be funny. As soon as I try to be funny, oh, it falls so flat. It falls flat.
I have heard people who are not particularly comedic writers, but find that, like, know how to write comedy, say that. It's like, I write comedy better when I'm not trying to be funny. you know. But it's different from when you're writing, for instance, sitcom scripts where you are set up punchline. That's very different because you need to look for, you need to be deliberate with your comedy. But yeah, I don't know. I think I still approach them differently. I can't really give you a formula. But I'm happy in both stages.
As soon as you figure out a formula, let us know, please.
I'll do that. Yeah.
So if you speak about your voice and like what is the female voice, I don't want to put it in this big umbrella like the female voice, but like with your voice, where do you find that you have the most control? On set or in your writing, when you're speaking about the female voice, or when you're directing or when you're writing?
Ooh. So that's hard. I think the blueprint of everything for me is always the script, you know. And sometimes, yes, it can fall flat. You can lose a lot of things that are not done properly on the day, you know, on set.
Mm-hmm.
But just it's undisturbed, you know, when you're sitting there and you're writing a script and you're creating characters, whether they are male or female, but when you understand your characters in the world that you're dealing with, you can do it with as much confidence and undisturbed and without certain influences. And then when you get to set, you can lose aspects of that because of different circumstances, you know, whether it's casting, whether it's having a performer on the day who is not comfortable with a certain scene, and then you lose certain nuances of dramaticness or of power or of confidence from a performer. And for me, you need sensitivity when you even get to the set because you want to uphold what is on the script. You do not want to lose on the thing that was created that's really lead you to the promised land.
Okay, and so when you speak then about like your voice, do you buy into this idea of there is a female voice and that's what we need to get out there, or like tell female stories and all of that? What's your take on this? There's a big debate around what is the female voice. Do we need a female voice? What does it mean? All of that.
It's a tough one because absolutely we need more participation from female bodies, because it's an entirely different experience when you live inside of a this female body, this black space, right? And that you experience the world differently, you experience people and the professional space differently, you're treated differently, therefore your perspective is important and it's particular, right? And that for me is what I understand by female voice, is that there's a particular aspect of life and of journeys that I understand only from this perspective, and that sometimes get diminished if told by people who don't get it at all, you know. However, as a storyteller in a black female voice, I also feel like I should not be limited to just telling stories that that particularly reflect people that look like me, because just because I'm a black woman doesn't mean all I can do is reflect on stories that are about black women, you know. That I cannot tell a story about men, that I cannot tell a story about
you don't
white
want to
men.
be boxed in.
Right, that I cannot tell, you know, do a drama film or story, that I cannot do stories about war, about car racing, about, you know. So I think we get limited once female participation is accepted. It's almost like then you are limited to how you participate and where you are allowed to participate. And I think that's absolutely rubbish. So a female voice for me right now, where I am, for me means a perspective from the shoes I walk in, as opposed to just the story I tell.
That you've just completely synthesized exactly what it is that it's just a perspective and a point of view, whereas not the complete ground as to which, because Ava DuVernay speaks really clearly about how she was all of a sudden it called for like black woman things. She did one black woman thing, and then that's the thing that she was called for, and those are the jobs that she got. Whereas it's so limiting, because I feel like we can tell so many different types of stories, and are capable of telling such vast and diverse types of stories. Okay.
Right. I mean, it happens.
I want to talk to you about your right.
It's happened to me as
Sorry,
well.
yes, please tell us.
Where I found myself being called for content that was either about Black women or directed at, targeted at Black women. And it still happens, where it's like, oh, this story, this Women's Day, like maybe let's get a Black female. And then it's like, then you are just like either a quota or the representative of like what Black female content is supposed to look and feel like, And a big challenge is like getting out of being perceived in that way, as being perceived as someone with a singular voice and a singular perspective, which is untrue.
It's fundamentally untrue. I did one show about witchcraft. Now I'm the girl you call for Gloria. Like, I promise you, I have more in me. I promise you, there's so much more to be told. And then sometimes you can feel like you're being brought. The story's been pre-decided, but they need, for you to add that spice.
Yeah. And it's like, no, we are not here for dramatic effect. It's like, guys, let's rethink this, and and it's not just, and we always think that it's the patriarchy, or that kind of behavior is from men, from white men, from Black, women do that to us also. They also tend to be part of this patriarchy and think that all we can do is what we've been limited to being perceived as. And this is why I've also said that I've also worked with a lot of men who have encouraged participation from Black women, who have encouraged participation of the voice that a Black woman and the perspective that a Black woman has to offer. And we cannot forget that either, because that's the industry we exist in.
I've actually found that a lot of men have been allies in a really great way to kind of push you forward in a way that maybe, and this is the problem, when you're marginalized, there is very little space. If the job is for one Black head writer and it's Sunni Faba and Moeti, I'm probably going to edge you out, or you're going to edge me out, because there is only space for one of us. So it's about finding allies who can amplify both our voices. Right.
And when the work for Black women only show up in Women's Month, and then it's like the only, like 5 Black female directors who exist must now be competition with each other. It's just so crazy, because then it means then we are only good for very limited types of storytelling, very limited types of jobs, and then it puts us up against each other, which is really ridiculous. There's so much work, and there should be enough for all of us.
Yeah. This is for me, like, when starting this platform and like jumping onto this platform, I was just like, that is what's important here, is that our voices can't cancel each other out.
Exactly.
There has to be some kind of shift that moves us from Ria and Sunny being neck and neck to win this one job. There should be more jobs.
Right. And there are more jobs.
They exist, right? They exist, but there's only space for one of us who looks this way. So on that then, do you find that you have to assert yourself in terms of pay and the wage gap and all of that? I once saw a production invoice list that I should not have seen, and saw what my male counterparts were getting, and I almost had a heart attack. I almost had a complete heart attack, and I went through a multitude of emotions, but the main one was that, how did I do this to myself? Then I was like, wait a minute, I didn't do this to myself. Why? What's your take on that?
And it's not just your male counterparts, it's also your white counterparts, because that is also another shift, okay?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
even the black men sometimes are not getting what the white people are getting, period, you know? And so it's just a constant self-asserting. And sometimes it's very hard to feel like you can assert yourself when you only get to work once a year, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
you lost me for a second.
You froze there for a second. Yes.
I think that it's about weighing up you know what you're willing to negotiate in terms of the space you occupy, the things you work on, and the kind of money you expect, and what is fair, you know. And a lot of the time, I used to have this conversation with some of my colleagues that, isn't it funny how they call black women when there's no budget? It's like every phone call that I get is like, yo, but the budget is low. And it's like, when is that not gonna happen? When are you gonna call me when you do have a good budget, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that makes you assert yourself better is when you feel like you have gathered enough experience to say, look, I have done this, I know how to do this, I know how to do that. So the confidence that you have in your work also allows you to have confidence in fighting for the rate that you expect. So one thing is, if it doesn't feel worth your time, don't do it. The last thing I want to do is be on a project and think, yo, when is this ending? Because I need to go make real money somewhere else. You don't want to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So you need to weigh up what you're getting from the project. And unfortunately, for many of us, we always say, oh, I'd love the experience. And that's where they always get us, right? Is,
100%, because you need it.
I need the experience. But then you need to draw that line for yourself of when you have all the experience that you feel like you need, you know. Because the thing is, jobs are going to keep coming, you know, but how many times are you going to keep compromising yourself and your pocket and your livelihood and your lifestyle, you know? So I think it's an individual positioning, every person and where they want to be in terms of the experience they want. You need to be able to draw that line for yourself, that okay, now I know what I feel like I need to know to have been training or to have been learning. Now I'm working, and now I want to be paid like I'm working.
It's interesting that you bring up the experience thing, because for me, a really good piece of advice I got regarding this situation, because I was really like, how do you navigate this, is that you're never going to have enough experience. You're only going to get the experience by doing the job. So I've now, and I mean, it's a privileged point of view, because I've been on lots of sets and in lots of writers' rooms. That's just like, if you don't think I have enough experience for this, then I'm not the person you should hire. Because I'm not going to go a cent below this. This is my amount now, you know? Because I can gather experience for 20 years. When is it going to be enough for you? Because the goalposts keep shifting.
Right. And as a freelancer, that job that's all it is to you. It's a job. You have nothing else to claim outside of that. You have no other residuals. You have no other negotiation. You know, there's no IP, there's nothing. All you have is that freelance, is that 5 days on that job. And is it gonna pay you what you need to move on and go look for the next thing? If it doesn't, then go look for something that makes you happy, you know? Or negotiate. The other truth is that, but here's the other thing, is that we don't negotiate because we think maybe, because sometimes everyone is going to negotiate like a salesman. They're going to start you down, you know. So the thing we all need to do is learn how to just negotiate, just try for more, you know, because sometimes you can get more.
Always. Always. I want to talk to you about your writer's room. And that I have a rule for all of my writers' rooms. And the first rule from jump is that there are no disclaimers. Because I feel like you kind of make an apology before you've even started speaking. Oh, I know this might not be a great idea, but none of that. You know, shoot it out. Say it. If it's not good, I'll tell you. Don't worry. That's what my job is. You know. So, what are some of the rules in your writers' rooms, and how do you conduct them typically?
Wow. Can I remember? I don't know. I just I like having people who aren't writers in the writers' room. That's one thing I really enjoy. I like writing, you know, and having these harvesting sessions where you get people who have the lived experience of what you are doing or what's in the realm of what you're doing, as opposed to someone who's using formulaic writing criteria to get to, you know, what where we want to get with the story objectives and all of that. So sometimes it's very helpful and sometimes it delays, but sometimes it's very helpful to just get an ordinary person, you know, someone with the lived experience, or someone who is just an audience, to kind of give you certain perspectives. And usually in the beginning rather than towards the end, I like to do that, because that's when we're all kind of getting our brains warmed up, you know, getting our emotions warmed up. So it's not a rule, but it's just something that I like to do. I can't think of any rules.
Okay. Well, I think that's a really great way to do it, because you've spoken before about how you write kind of what you know, but you can't know what you've never lived. So it's really important to get all of that. And I think research is such a big cornerstone, and you can tell from your work, because you haven't been a mother who lost someone in Marikana, you haven't been a prisoner, all of that stuff. But the research is so fundamental.
Yeah, and
So
getting
do you
yourself
feel
emotionally close to those people, because if I don't know a lived experience, I can only really understand it from that person's point of view, but I need to get close enough to that person to understand it. So I think, you know, and sometimes it's hard to draw a line. I mean, like when we were doing lockdown, now you have people who, I mean, you don't know how it happens, but people have cell phones inside of prisons, you know, and like,
yes.
where do I draw the line between, okay, now I'm just not working anymore, and do I want to be friends, you know, and what's the ethical line that I draw between
That's so
befriending you to get my story and really genuinely wanting to be part of your life, you know? So
Yeah,
it's also
because
like,
there's an element of harvesting, right? Because you're harvesting
exactly,
their real life in
exactly,
order to make television or film.
right,
So the ethics around that are a bit complex.
very much, very much.
I always say to my friends that I own everything that has happened to me. It's all my IP. If you happen to be a part of that and you see yourself on screen,
Sorry,
hi,
it's mine now.
it's mine.
Yeah.
What would be your absolute dream project to work on? If the budget wasn't a constraint, or anything like that, or something that's been made that you really like, that you would love to have made and see?
I mean, I have many of my own projects that I'm pursuing that feel like dream projects to me, but things that exist that I just find like, oh, I love that, is something like Handmaid's Tale, you know?
Oh,
Like
yes.
when I
Yes.
watch that, I just always feel like, I could have been there. I could, you know, like,
Yeah.
I could have, you know, like this could have been us, you know, somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I enjoy also actually magical realism, children's films, for instance. So like you just watch Aladdin and how that was put together, and I think, wow, you know, with all the money in the world, this is beautiful. If we are able to do and tell those kind of stories, you know, it just feels like limitless. Like you watch Mowgli and what they're able to do with CGI and the animals and the children. It's just like, it's amazing to me.
It's mind blowing. I believe we'll get there. I believe we'll get there
Yeah.
with something that feels very South African, that can be owned and produced and made by our own people. How do you handle criticism as a writer? Because you're the first point of call, you're the first draft of literally everything everyone sees. So you're also the most critiqued, so to speak. How do you handle that, and notes and feedback in that situation?
I enjoy getting feedback and those notes before the thing is made, before it goes too far, so that by the time it's out and whatever criticism that comes, I know that I've done as much work on it as possible. So everyone, yeah, a lot of us, we work in isolation and you sit there on your own and you write the script, but I give the script out to people to read. I put a script editor on. I do a read through. Sometimes I've done this before where I call people to my place and we do a read through together, just so that I know I've heard and done and interrogated as much of it as possible. I do script readings with the cast, table reads, and I want to interrogate it so much that I know that by the time it goes to set, by the time that's shot, all the work that I could have done from my end has been done. So that when any criticism comes, I either know that I did that on purpose, or I can defend something that I made this decision deliberately, and therefore I can stand behind it.
I love that as a motto to kind of attach to your own work, that this is the decisions I've made and this is what I'm sticking to.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten criticism where it's like, yeah, but this, but that. It's like, yeah, but no, I wanted that,
At some point, you have to put your foot down.
Absolutely, because not everyone will actually be happy with your interpretation. Again, it's an interpretation, right? It's a perspective, and nobody will understand 100% your perspective. Why I feel like this person cannot wake up wearing red lipstick, cannot go to bed without tying her hair, cannot certain things. I mean, those are small nuances, but certain decisions that I know that my perspective has informed the confidence in this decision.
So how personal then is your work to you? Because if I look at the trajectory of your work, PS, on my Insta stories, there is a fantastic trailer for your film.
So
everyone should go check that out. But I can, without knowing you personally, I can almost like feel you. Like, a piece of you is inside the work. Right. So how personal do you do it, especially when you have to hand it over to someone else to direct and shoot and hope that your baby?
I mean, I've tried doing it in different ways where sometimes when I'm doing work for broadcaster, I am able to sort of draw a line and remove a little bit of myself from it. But it's also hard because you are you, and you bring what you know to what you write, and to the voice that you use your voice to write those stories. Even if you're writing about, I don't know, a middle-aged white person in New York, it's still your perspective, right? But I think the way my at the moment is that I'm getting closer to my work, because I'm also working more with stories that I pick more delicately. Like, I don't just take work because I want to create a name. I need to work. I need to pay bills. I need to, so I choose my work a little bit more strategically. I choose more carefully. I have a bit more autonomy in terms of how I want to direct my career, and therefore I don't just take things that I don't completely connect to. So I think it's bringing me closer to my work, and therefore I think I'll get even closer to the stories I tell.
So what's been your most personal project then?
I think Moeti. Moeti has been my most personal project. Yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So how do you master the discipline then? Because if there's one thing about writing, is that you have to show immense amounts of discipline. How have you mastered discipline? Do you feel like you have mastered discipline?
No, I haven't. I still have weaknesses. I still get stuck sometimes. I still procrastinate. And like I said, the closer I get to my work, the more I feel that way, because I think when I was doing more TV work, I could put on the machine inside of myself and just like wake up, write, deliver, because the deadlines were so real. The managing of writers and whether it's broadcaster and producers. So the demands kind of turned me you know, into someone who's able to just have a kind of discipline that was needed for the job. And head writing back to back like that, it is exhausting. It is strenuous. It also takes a little bit of joy out of the work, because the process is just so demanding, you know.
Yes, yes.
But now I write with more feeling. I think I feel, you know, I write with um and once you get into a feeling space, you get a little bit more like, "Oh, do I feel is right now the time?" Like, you know, it's just like
Are you like, you become the writer of your dreams inside?
right,
Like,
and you become, I'm becoming
today.
less disciplined, and I don't know if maybe the pandemic has something to do with it, because it really has kind of affected my discipline, you know. And I'm still I'm always working on myself when it comes to that, so work in progress.
So which one of your projects then has been the most challenging and sort of changed you, like had that big fundamental shift?
Lockdown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lockdown. Yeah, I think
How so?
the concept was so far removed from me, from my reality, from my understanding of what it is to be a woman, um, what morals and ethics I live by. And you know, when you are also raised in a certain way, and it's like, hmm, Iboshwa, you know, and you kind of speak that
Yes.
language, and
Yes.
you marginalize a certain group of people because they're not who you are. It's very different when you have to start, when those people are humanized to you, and when you have to start empathizing with a person or a type of lifestyle that you never
To
understood.
write authentic characters that are real
Exactly.
people.
Exactly.
So what
So
advice would you then give aspiring writers who want to get into a professional writing room?
um you know, I think a lot of people want to be something, and you think, I want to do it because I want to tell stories. But a lot of the time, people don't indulge in that kind of work itself. I speak to a lot of writers who don't actually read scripts. I speak to writers who don't actually watch certain content with studying it, with trying to understand how it's made, but rather want to have the output of something that they like, and don't understand the process of the thing that they want to be. So what I tell writers is, read scripts, you know,
100%. Yeah.
watch
Put
the
them
thing.
down.
Yeah, watch the kind of thing you want to make. Watch it and go and look for online free scripts. If you like Insecure, the scripts are online. If you like Modern Family, if you like um, Handmaid's Tale, whatever it is, go and
Yeah.
look for um, podcasts with writers. Go and look for just, you know, shows like this, where a writer of a show that you like has spoken about their work and the processes that they went through. Just do as much of your own homework as possible. You cannot,
Yeah.
you know, want to be something that you don't know. So get to know the thing you want to be, and get to understand how it's made.
That is like such a paramount thing to do, and that's the way. Like, I did a lot of learning in inside writers' rooms by watching other writers, but the most important was when I went home and took a soprano script and was just like,
Right.
okay, everyone says this show is great.
Yeah.
Like, let me actually realize the fundamentals and the technicalities that go in behind it.
And
Yeah.
also a process that is always very valuable to me is script to screen, you know, and that also is part of my process as a director. Is not everything that's on the script is going to land on the screen, and just understanding the transition in that process has also made me think about my own processes differently, to consider my work differently. So you can never stop learning about your own work and learning from other people.
Well, I think you are an incredibly driven woman. And one last question that I want to just ask you, because I think this is so important, is that you are a young woman, but you had such a huge title and property in lockdown that you were the head writer for. And I mean, that Monday night slot at Mzansi Magic is highly coveted. it's millions and millions of rands like go into whatever the words you write are. And that goes out to millions and millions of South Africans and Africans actually globally. So how did you silence the noise? Because I feel like across industries, with all these conversations we've been having, a lot of people like, there's so much pressure on the work that we do. How do you silence the noise to get the output that you need?
It's hard to silence the noise because I had a lot of noise, you know, and by noise, it's not always noise per se. It's some of it is guidance, and some of it is advice, and some of it is you know, is people trying to direct you in what they feel is the right direction. But you need to ultimately stay true to the product that you're making, because even if 10 people tell you about how you are going to wake up with red lipstick, you need to be authentic to the story and the characters that you are writing about. Is that, and that's the way to block out too many influences and too many people trying to direct you and to manage you, is that once you are authentic to what you are writing, and to the characters that you are writing about, then you can go out and listen to what everyone else has to say.
That's dope. Thank you so much. I think we've reached the end of our time. This has been so informative. It has been so insightful. I am so grateful for your time and your generosity with speaking about your work and like your process and everything. And I hope everyone has gained something from this, and we'll see you again next Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Rewriting the Script. Thank you, Moeti. You are a powerhouse and you're an important voice shaping the landscape of South African television, and we thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this platform, and thank you to everyone for tuning in.